Now we can get into our forum, and we'll be discussing our new strategic plan and volunteer engagement in that context. We're looking forward to your comments, hearing from you, and some of our members and team will also be weighing in. Joining me are Madhuri, our Community Connection Specialist, Sean, our Director of Community Development, and we also have our Executive Director, Karine, in the call, and Director of Operations, Marina. So I would like to begin the presentation and forum by asking you all this very important question. And I would like to know, in what ways do volunteers have the most impact on your organizations? Feel free to unmute yourself, you can type in the chat, but we'd love to hear from you. So if you can tell us how volunteers have the most impact on your organization, that would be great. And this question is just to get us in the mindset of volunteering, even within the STRAT plan and volunteer recruitment, what we're here to talk more about. In what ways do volunteers help out in your organization? Do you have anything specifically dedicated for volunteers to do in the organization? How do you feel they make a greater impact?
We've got a few answers coming in the chat, if you want to read them out.
Sure. So with our mission to improve people's quality of life, that's a great point, Deb. And I think it's so important for us to realize that volunteers have such a good impact or great impact on the greater sense of things and our mission and vision. So wonderful insight. Janet says volunteers allow us to provide a breadth and depth of service that would not be possible without them. That's great. As we work to fulfill our mission, our volunteers provide support with governance, events, and fundraising and program support. That's a great insight. Thank you, Shelley.
I just want to weigh in. This is Madhuri from Volunteer MBC, and we can't do anything without volunteers. That's not only for Volunteer MBC, but it's overall for all the nonprofit organizations for overall in Peel. So volunteers are our backbone and not just contribute to fulfill the roles, but they drive our mission and forward our organization mission.
Very true. Thank you, Madhuri.
Great answers from people. Okay, let's keep going.
So now that we discussed a bit about how volunteers impact organizations, Sean, can you provide me some background on how we arrived at our new strategic plan, getting into the conversation of VMBC strategic plan?
Sure, Mom, thanks. So when we undertook this, the first thing that I want you to know is that back in 2020, we had launched a 5-year strategic plan. And at that time, it was quite a process in 2019 that we went through to develop it. And it led to both our new mission and vision, which we continue to use today to connect the community and improve lives through volunteerism. When we say improve lives through volunteerism, it refers to not only the lives impacted, as people have commented on how it improves the quality of life and makes things so much better for the people served by all the organizations, but also improving the lives of volunteers themselves through their health and well-being, community belonging, and skills and employability. So that was our mission and vision that was established in 2020, and it also led to our rebrand, and that's still in place as we undertook the next phase, next chapter of this. And so as we concluded that 5-year plan at the end of 2024, it was quite amazing to see what was accomplished, especially as we went through the pandemic and saw our community really rally together. So you want to move on to the next slide, Maham? So we were very fortunate. The region of Peel was able to support us in engaging some consultants from Rael Strategy Group to support our ability to do a deep dive and really understand where we were positioned now and what that means for how we are able to work together with all of our member organizations and stakeholders to drive a new strategic plan. And so Rael completed an important and extensive document review going through a lot of
Excuse me,
files
Sean.
that we had, notes that we
Sean,
had.
so
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but there's several people waiting in the lobby
Okay.
that are not even able to get in.
Okay. Maybe Maham, you can investigate that and see if you can call them in somehow or give them the direct join link. Thank you. I don't see those people here, so maybe there's some technical feature. So thank you for letting me know. So Ryle completed a document review. They also underwent a deep environmental scan. They used an engagement strategy, which I'll talk about, to really understand better what our stakeholders thought, our members and community, as well as developing ultimately a strategic roadmap. So what I'm going through here is an abridged version of that strategic plan, and hopefully it will frame the discussion for us around how we're serving community. So we keep moving. Next slide. Thanks. So the engagement. So when it comes to all of the engagement that Rael completed, so they really did a lot of asking through key informant interviews, through a survey, and established some of the things that are going on, and then combine that with the document review environmental scan, and they were really able to provide some key insights. And so at a high level, these are some of the strengths and opportunities identified. And as I said, the full strategic plan goes into each of these in greater detail. But for your benefit, here's what they identified specifically: that we were strong in being resilient and agile, that we have a lot of dedication among our team with a lot of passion and commitment, and that there's a lot of collaboration and multitasking capabilities. And so these are some of our organizational strengths that were identified through the engagement and that stood out. There were some opportunities that they see, definitely in terms of enhanced data and technology use. Fortunately, through the last 3 years, we've been able to engage some funding from the Ontario Trillium Foundation, which also helped us to do some of our digital transformation. And so that's also going to be really important in the years to come. Opportunities to expand partnership and look at opportunities for alignment with other organizations and other volunteer centers. So we'll be hearing more about that as we get into our forum discussion. And then certainly around advocacy and training. Some challenges, some are common among our sector: the resource limitations, funding dependencies, visibility and awareness. They also identified a need for focus. And I think this is one of the great things about the new strategic plan, is that it's really going to allow us to get back to basics on some things and also prioritize most essential things. Because especially during the years of the pandemic, when we had to pivot, and that became the word of the day at different organizations, we were juggling. And so I think this is really one of the challenges that was identified, and this new strategic plan will help us address. And so also the opportunity for future directions rely around capacity building, community engagement and visibility, and sustainable funding and revenue diversification. So these are some of the things that came out of the engagement. Now, when I go into the next few slides, I'll be talking a little bit about the key priorities in the roadmap. But essentially, the purpose of this roadmap is to allow us to focus on our core functions and our foundational activities and make sure that it's sustainable, create space and capabilities necessary for proactive decision making. So rather than simply responding to things as they happen, we've been very interested in staying on top of things, staying aware ahead of time, and being able to plan further ahead. And so this first year of the strategic plan is certainly a lot about our ability to plan and prepare Volunteer BC and work with all of its partners to do that. There's also been identified key in the strategic plan was the importance of organizational sustainability and a path for growth and future evolution. So it means that in the next 3 years, we've been taking on a lot of things that are intentionally designed to be scalable, to be growable, to be things that will allow for member organizations and partners and community members to be able to participate and be more involved, so that it has a longer arc of continuity and longevity. Increasing engagement within our organizations and a wide number of stakeholders. This is part of the reason why we wanted to launch this strategic plan with a forum, because throughout the year and throughout the next 3 years, we're really emphasizing the importance of reaching out to our stakeholders and understanding better what they need, how we can be useful, and staying aware and connected. And then bringing greater attention to raising the profile of volunteer sector and field region, which I'll speak about in the next couple slides. So one of the pillars is communicating to connect. The goal here for us to be relentless and raising awareness of volunteerism and its impact, while increasing engagement of various stakeholders to work with Volunteer in BC. So this is really important, and there are 3 elements to this. I'm going to bring up the first element. So when it comes to the benefits of volunteering, the social economic benefits of volunteering to the volunteers, as well as to the wider society, we are really interested in not only producing a narrative that we can be capable to tell the story, the impact of volunteerism more specifically, and a more data evidence-driven approach, so that we're sharing knowledge, and we want to be ones to share knowledge and really do so in a way that is going to connect with community, so that in a time when people are feeling more pressures and stressors in life, and their challenges impede, that volunteering is not an afterthought, that it can be upfront. Next item on the types of engagement we've got are the marketing communication strategy. So we're looking to map all the audiences and sub-audiences that exist in this community and really focus on getting the message out. Many of our member organizations identified that over the years that they need help in terms of making sure that the community is aware of them and able to access their services, and identifying their volunteer opportunities and being able to recruit them. So a really robust marketing communication strategy is a goal for Volunteer in BC. And then finally, there's stakeholder roadshow. So being able to actually be out there in the community more on the ground, getting the word out, going to community where it is, thinking about neighborhood-based approach to being in the community, and letting the community know that where they can volunteer, what the needs and assets are of the community. Okay, so that's one pillar. Next pillar is the people strengthened sector. So this is really looking at all of our personnel, internal and the people we work with. So it's a cross-section of stakeholders to strengthen their voice, streamline our operations, and enhance mutually beneficial partnerships to drive outcomes and attain goals. So, one of the key things here in this part of the plan is how we're going to advocate. So we'll be looking to advocate to government on a multilateral level. So that means reaching out and talking to different stakeholder audiences. Mom, you can advance that first pillar. Yeah. And then, we want to be able to really have a voice. In the last few years, we've seen lots of changes in government, at the sort of worldwide trends that are changing in terms of approaches and things like that. So it's very important that volunteerism has a place in government. We want to see that happen at the provincial level. We want to see it happen at federal level. And certainly we do want to be able to advocate better at a local level, because that's where we think things happen. And so although our municipalities are our funders and big supporters, we want to make sure that volunteerism remains on the fore of the agenda. Looking at the personnel structure internally at Volunteer in BC, all the volunteers we engage, all the committees that we have, but also, being able to be better at looking at how that affects the whole sector. So, thinking about strategic partnerships that might help us address gaps and able to serve you better as well. And then finally, strategic partnerships that are built around shared objectives. So really understanding what you're looking for and what value your organizations add to the collective of the Volunteer in BC family of nonprofits, as well as where we can bring value and strengthen you. We know that we don't come to other organizations as a powerhouse. We come to them as a strategic partner, and that's something that we really want to elevate. And then we go on to the last pillar, which is sustainability. And so sustainability equals growth. So when we're talking about sustainability, many people think of just the financial component, and that's definitely an important part of this, but it's really to focus our efforts on core programs and services that are proactive and data-driven and will reach all business areas while strengthening the case for revenue development and diversification. So we believe that if we get really strong in the areas that we're best at and really lean into them, then we would be able to build around that a really strong revenue strategy. So that identifies 3 key items. One is to go through that review process, and that's what we'll be doing. And the better part of this year is going to do a lot of reviews. You may see more surveying from Volunteer NBC. You may get more communications asking for your inputs, and that's going to be vital to this process. We're also going to be looking at how we can do evidence-informed decision-making, just to make things more clear-cut around why we're doing things and choosing to do things more efficiently that way. And we're going to be looking to gather some evidence and insights from you over the course of the year to be able to do that. And then there are services that fall outside of things that maybe everyone needs, but there are types of services that some organizations come to us for and have come to us for on a custom basis. And so we want to be able to offer more additional fee-based services so that if there is a specific need that we don't already offer it to you out of the box, that we be able to provide that to organizations and work with them to deliver that. So, depending on what your needs are, those could be varied, but we're going to be looking to develop a new suite of fee-based services that will also help our sustainability and keep us focused on the important things. All right, so that's a little background on that. So, I wanted to raise that, Maham, as kind of some of the things that we're looking at, and hopefully, that'll frame this discussion as we start to talk a little bit more about what it means for volunteers in the community.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that, Sean. So what I'm getting is that working together with our member organizations and the community is going to be crucial to delivering this plan. And on that note, I'm interested to know and hear from everyone, where do you think Volunteer NBC should be to raise the profile of volunteerism?
So Deb's asked to clarify. So I think this question is somewhat driven from our strategic plan wanting to be both out there more in the community as well as looking at our communication strategies. So we're interested to know where any ideas, suggestions, and requests that organizations have or you folks have for where we ought to be in order to do that. So there's a comment here in the chat from Janet: be where people gather. Community centers, libraries, places of worship. Okay, so the gathering places are really important. Definitely, these are some of the key ones that we have been there and we want to be there more. So that's great that you identified that, Janet. I think post-secondary institutions are really big, and I think we've heard a little bit about over the last year and two, especially about changes at the post-secondary institutions. So they definitely are also looking for help. So very important for us to be there. And feel free to also unmute yourselves, elaborate on your comments. You're not limited to the chat. We'd love to hear your voices too. Shelley says, I think we need to spend some time doing more education of our youth about volunteerism as a social construct, as opposed to a box to tick off on their now I can graduate list. They need to learn to love volunteering and helping the community in addition to getting benefit from it. It's a great point, Shelley. I think what we hear around the 40 hours and the requests we get in late May and June from students trying to complete it. We're always telling them to go beyond 40, think about 400, think about, not volunteerism as a commodity, but something that's really powerful. And so this is super important. It's great to hear that you'd like to see a Volunteer NBC as a collective put more emphasis on reaching youth in that way. Mom, do you want to read some of the other comments out?
Charmin, I think, has her hand raised, so feel free to unmute yourself and speak.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
I mean, what we are looking into is that there's a lot of influx of newcomers coming into the Peel region and just overall across. And I know that we do sit at quite a few of those working groups and tables. And I wanted to just find out because many a time, even we, like the newcomers who comes to our organization, they do look for volunteering. And the other piece is many a time they ask for Canadian experience, and it's a very good way to start. So I think, it's for system navigation piece even that what are the requirements, and sometimes it's for those experience and just kind of trying to understand, how to work in a Canadian context and all not. So is there something, it's rather a question or a suggestion as well, that is Volunteer MBCs reaching out or has planned to reach out to like those newcomer groups, or like I know that region has the Peel Newcomer Strategy Group. So all of those, just wanted to kind of find out what's your plan, or
It's very important. I think. Thank you
Yeah.
for identifying that audience. It's huge audience for us, and we're definitely seeing the influx of more newcomers, even physically in person, coming to our office, as well as coming to our website and social media and asking. So there's definitely a reach there. Peel Newcomer Strategy Group has expressed an interest in partnering with us as well, and there are other organizations that are serving very very newcomer facing, and I think it's really important, and it has to be on the radar. So and this is definitely one that I appreciate. Back to you, Maham.
Madhuri, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just wanted to add in what Sherman has just shared. So at Volunteer NBC, we serve newcomers on a daily basis. That's one of the targeted audience that we have. And though we receive a lot of requests, sometimes we are struggling to get organizations to open their doors to give those newcomers the opportunities. So I would like to say if there are other opportunities that organization would like to create to get these newcomers involved and not limiting to resume or skill sets and looking beyond just what's visible. So that's like one neat thing that to be added.
Absolutely, Madhuri. And I think one of the ways that I would suggest is that if, like the strategy groups like PNSG or any, regional table, what happens is all the, organizations who works with newcomers are already, gathered and coordinate their services and support. So I think it's a good place for even Volunteer Embassy to even propose that, we need to kind of figure out some strength-based ways to connect newcomers into, and then hiring, and what would that look like? Because I'm sure, that's just, I think it just makes sense to have that and collectively promote that within those settlement agencies, but together as a collective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there was another hand raised.
I think it's down now, Maham. But maybe we can read out some of the comments and then go to the next question.
Yep. So we have where people gather, which we talked a bit about. Shelley says, I think we need to spend some time doing more education of our youth about volunteerism as a social construct, as opposed to a box to tick off on their now I can graduate list. And that's a wonderful point. They need to learn to love volunteering and helping their community in addition to getting benefit. Leaders of volunteers should be where people are. We have some ideas: use social media more, profile organizations, outreach events, and secondary school seems to be a popular option. Susan, you have your hand raised. You can speak.
Hi, I just want to bounce off what Sharman was just saying, that there are some organizations that provide training for jobs, and sometimes that includes a volunteer placement. So, for example, MyAg. So that might be an example. Maybe we can not we, Volunteer NBC can reach out to those organizations to say, how can we support the volunteer placement portion of the training for people who are looking for jobs. And the other thing I was going to say is a few of the volunteers that we have had, and then it kind of caught on by word of mouth, is people in shelters looking for the Canadian experience, but also someplace to go during the day rather than sitting around in the shelters. So then they just show up and say, so and so sent me, and so it works out well for us. We're kind of close to a nearby shelter where we are at Vida.
Yes, and recently, just to add to what Susan was saying, they actually opened up a big, like a shelter, like I think reception center with 680 people's capacity, and this is from region of Peel, and it's in Mississauga, I think, right beside near the airport. So what they're trying to do is, instead of having them all like separated in different hotels, now they're kind of bringing it into a one consolidated place. So that's actually a good, good start to even have some of those promotions, because I'm sure, the asylum seekers and all, many a time they do need a space and place to, go and network, as well as kind of do some volunteering as well. So I think that would be a good one to start with.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for those insights, Charmin and Susan. Gagandeep? Gagandeep, you have your hand raised. You can feel free to unmute and speak.
Hi. Actually, according to my thinking, I think to rise a profile of volunteer by digital preference, like actively post on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter to showcase our volunteer stories, events, and the impact and fun fact about our volunteers.
I think that's a great point, highlighting the volunteers themselves and showcasing their stories and information about them. And that's definitely a great way to attract more volunteers as well. Good point. Myrna, you had your hand up previously. You can feel free to unmute and speak.
Well, I'm just going to say all volunteers aren't youth.
Yes.
There's certainly a good number of volunteers that are older adults. You have a lot of newcomers that are in the country. Many of them seek out churches to go there and seek help from them. And I think that you should go around to these different churches to engage those people, because they are looking for volunteer opportunities, and they are also looking for employment, of course. And I believe when you mentioned I forget what it's actually called, but the place, or what is it, the hospitality or whatever it is, hub that they have for the refugees and asylum seekers near the airport. There's only they've only have about 70 or 80 people in there. That place is not completed.
That's a good point. Thank you for sharing. Let's move on to our next question. How can volunteers support an advanced communication strategy? We did talk a bit about this in terms of digital engagement, and but how can volunteers, specifically not organizations attracting volunteers, but how can volunteers themselves help us support an advanced communication strategy?
So I'll maybe add to this question. So anybody wants to comment on it, because one thing is that many organizations are trying to do outreach, right? They're trying to get out there and spread the word about various things that they do. I don't know how many of them are leveraging volunteers to help them in those efforts. Probably, maybe your board members are helping spread the word, or maybe you might have some committees. But I wonder if you'd want to see volunteers get more training on being able to spread the word, function as ambassadors, or for Volunteer NBC to play a role to help train some volunteers to help communicate about you. I wonder if that's something that is how much interest that is there for that type of function for Volunteer NBC. Shelley says testimonials on socials. Yeah, we definitely need their voices there.
I think it would be valuable because most of, for instance, in our organization, we do a lot of health communications and, promotions and messages. So any level of training that, enhance the volunteers' skills in communications, it's a plus, right? It's a valuable piece. And definitely, I see that, this is something that would be interested in. So, yeah.
Very good. Yeah, I think out of our membership, I know maybe a dozen or so organizations where they specifically say, "Oh yeah, volunteers are helping us specifically on marketing and media and different sort of strategies."
Yeah.
But maybe it's something that could be more coordinated, or in terms of giving them support, it could be something that could be like a multi-organization effort to give them some formal training so that they can get something more out of it. So this is really an interesting thing to explore. But maybe we should move on to our next set of questions, Mom.
What
I think
collaboration?
this one is pretty similar, so I think we might have got some answers on this, but I don't want to interrupt you, but maybe we should just get a few suggestions on this one.
Mhm. The next one, how could volunteers be engaged in advocacy?
Maybe the collaboration opportunities too,
Okay.
yeah.
What collaboration opportunities do you see?
I think we can, this is Madhuri, look into our own partnership allies before we reach outside to see what's happening, to look into our own set of partnerships who we are currently working, any grassroots or any other organization who have similar mission and vision to promote those and similar audience as well. If, for example, if you have looking for specific youth related opportunity, look into your partners who have similar programs and get a collaboration around that as well, would be one of the good thing to have that advocacy.
That's a good point, and it's similar to what Janet has said as well in the
Yeah.
chat. Have you considered doing lunch and learns with companies, educating their employees about what you do? It's a good point. And Corinne also shares a wonderful question. Actually, we'd like to know, would members be interested in Volunteer NBC hosting more local volunteer fairs? Awesome.
Shelley's giving that a big yes.
Collaboration with other volunteer centers to get guest speakers. That's a good point.
Oh, okay. Janet, do you want to elaborate a little on that? Well, when you say guest speakers, are you talking about people to motivate volunteers or for training purposes, or was there something specific that was coming to your mind when you said thinking about guest speakers?
Sorry, just trying to work Teams. I don't usually use Teams.
That's okay.
I was thinking more of certainly I work in hospice. In hospice, sometimes we collaborate with other hospice organizations to because sometimes guest speakers are costly, right? Or they don't want to present to a small audience. They're only interested in presenting to a big audience, right? So if you can work together with some other centers to get in a guest speaker that maybe would be attractive either to organizations, staff and nonprofit organizations that might want to attend and might be willing to pay, could be, an opportunity for you.
Right. So like group working together with a number of organizations at the same time, trying to pool our efforts to be able to bring in some of those high profile speakers. Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, these are really good points. One thing in the strategic plan that I touched on was the government approach. And, one thing that I see is, volunteers, in general, like it's a skill to be able to know how to communicate with government officials, and I would see maybe on the lines of shared training or shared joint efforts between organizations, a collaboration might be to help get some volunteers some good media training, so that when you have a media opportunity or an opportunity to get in front of an official to delegate to city council or something along those lines, that we might have some more volunteer power there. So these are a few things. We don't have too much time, so maybe we should move on to the next set of questions.
So we're interested in learning from our members, and even with our staff members as well. Madhuri, if you can give some input too. What trends are occurring in the interests of prospective volunteers? So to those people that are working closely with volunteers, leaders of volunteers, and even just amongst nonprofits, are there any specific trends that you're noticing? What are volunteers more interested in, or do they gravitate towards a specific type of, for example, volunteer posting or specific type of volunteer opportunities? Any other factors?
Yeah, definitely there is new trends that coming along. I wouldn't say it's totally new. We've been seeing those trends on and on, continuous from the pandemic. So one of them is virtual volunteering. That's was more evolved and continues to grow from pandemic, but it's not ended there. It's going to continue, and the new trend is volunteers who are looking for more virtual opportunities that will give them more flexibility if they are working, maybe having that scheduled during the time they're off, during lunchtime. And again, next one is more kind of hybrid volunteering that gives the flexibility not only for virtual, but some of them may need that interaction to come in with into the office or to the organization to have the feel sense of belonging, which we can deny because each volunteer is different and they have their own preferences to cater both virtual and hybrid. So it's kind of a good mixture. And definitely short-term commitments. Those days are kind of getting harder and harder to have like commitment for 2 years, even for board members. I know that terms are 2 to 3 years, but chances are within 1 year you can see the recruitment is again up. The postings you have to renew because maybe they're not able to continue for whatever reason. If they're engaged, of course, but that's the new trend, that the shorter commitment, it's the new normal now. And also the volunteers are looking to improve their skills, skill-based volunteering. They're looking to improve their own skills, not just giving back to the organization. So we have to keep in that mind to how we're going to balance with the win-win situation for our needs as an organization, and also to have that retention for skill-based volunteers as well, and how we can incorporate to work together. Those are a few points that I am seeing more on our postings as well. So just wanted to share my input.
Those are some wonderful insights, and we have a lot of people actually agreeing with this in the comments as well. Short-term opportunities, a lot of volunteers want references. They're thinking longer terms in terms of their career, so they're looking for jobs, but they want references within volunteering. Increase in working age volunteers with evening or weekend availability only, so more flexible opportunities. You also mentioned hybrid model too. And it's interesting that Deb is saying we are seeing less interest in virtual and more in person. So I think now it depends, obviously, person to person, but now, we're actually 5. Wow, we're 5 years from the pandemic. So I'm still stuck in 2022. We're 5 years from the pandemic. So people are, wanting to join more in-person opportunities and hybrid, and join certain events as well. We have in the chat opportunities that offer something that can be added to resumes to help in job search, for sure. Guidance and support of how to find a volunteer position that is best suited for the individual. Yep, like this can increase retention of volunteers. I would recommend working with member organizations individually. Maybe this would fit into your fee-for-service model. That's a great point, China. Thank you for that. To analyze their programs and advise them on how to strengthen their recruitment and onboarding processes. That's a great insight. Building on the value of volunteering as long-term career and skill development.
I just want to comment on Katie's point about guidance and supporting a volunteer position. So, of course, Volunteer in BC has done this for a long time. Probably it's one function that has existed since Volunteer NBC was founded, that helping folks figure out what they want to do and making it more intentional. But one thing that we've increased over the last couple of years and aim to do so more in the next few years is to be able to help volunteers further along that journey. So even after they get connected to an organization, have more opportunities to touch base and follow up with them and see how that has progressed, and whether they, continue to volunteer, if they're looking to, change their role, or if it didn't work out, what went wrong, and do a little bit of better understanding around that. And so, of course, all of our member organizations have committed to our member policy to try to give them good experiences. But until we, do deeper dive, we may not know if something is really, where breakdowns might occur. So that's one reason, but also just because we think we want to keep the community connected and motivated to volunteer in the longer run. So that's something we definitely want to increase, and it will take some work collectively to make that happen. But it's also something that we see fits in with how positions need to be designed. If it's going to be shorter term and people can't commit so much, but then they do 1 or 2 events, or they do some short bit of volunteering, and then maybe we can re-engage them after that and build upon it. So I'm hopeful that those are some things that may help.
So leading into our next question, how can volunteer positions reflect these evolving expectations? So we talked about shorter term volunteering, more skill-based volunteering. Madhuri, do you have any insights on how can member organizations alter their volunteer postings to keep up with these expectations and more information and factors like this?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that before even we think of designing a role, we have to work a little bit backwards to do a needs assessment. And I know this word comes often when you even think. So do a needs assessment, have a gap analysis done, see what's available within your pool of volunteers. Are you keeping them engaged rather than just jumping ahead and creating 10 or 20 roles when there are skilled volunteers in your current pool? So reach out to those before we even think to draft any new position. And are they aligned with the goals, meeting the organization requirement, and what will be your strategy, recruitment strategy? Big thing on recruitment strategy, screening and onboarding. Often you see that if the screening or onboarding takes too long, which of course depends upon each organization's skill, recruitment strategies, chances are the interest is gone. They're interested for when they reach up to the interview stage, and if it's too long wait period, they are not interested, and then we have to chase them. And it's I know there are a lot of volunteer coordinators agree with that. And think about even drafting before a role, the supervision part, any training, and evaluate your own resources. Who's going to supervise those new volunteers? How are you going to, if there is any space required, is that being taken care of? If you're engaging in-person volunteer. So after determining all those, even planning the engagement, if all these points are clear, then it comes the actual role description. And then again, it has the clear role description, have the responsibilities and roles defined, and keeping them to the point and very clear. If it's too much information, chances are the role description doesn't even have, like, it's 2 seconds rule. Keep your title, that's the storefront of any volunteer role. 2 seconds, if the volunteer is not looking at it, that we have lost some future volunteers. So those are the few points before we even start to think to recruit volunteers.
Sherman?
I just wanted to kind of point out, or maybe you already do this, but we, at least in our organization, we talk a lot about the participatory kind of approach to any program design or any activity. So just to keep things in the client-centric, like for volunteers, like, do you have a feedback session? Like, when we're looking at the, to reflect the evolving expectations, are we looking at expectations of the organizations, but as well as the volunteers as well, to kind of really balance the, mutual, both mutual benefits for both sides, right? What are the win-wins for both the volunteers as well as the organizations who would be working with those volunteers, right? So in that part of the process, I'm assuming that Volunteer MBC already do have that kind of process in place where you do have that communications with the volunteers as well to see, like, for example, I think Madhuri already mentioned that many of them are asking for some of them are asking for in-person, some of them are saying we would like hybrid or online, right? So, and then I'm sure, especially with newcomers, you're going to run into nuances on transportation, hurdles and all kinds of things, right? System navigation. So just to kind of, to keep having this relevant, I think for VMBC, that's a process that has to be tuned and really make sure, and that could be also part of the marketing strategy as well for you guys, that to really show that volunteerism is not just kind of you're giving free service, there is a win-win for you as well, and what are those, right? And the skill sets that they will be gaining as a in addition to the experiences and the networking opportunities and all of that, right? So just thought that I would put that out.
So that's a great point, Sharman. I think because of the ratio of how many people come to us seeking volunteer opportunities versus how many sort of traditional volunteer positions get published with us, generally speaking, there's a lot of trying to tell volunteers to balance their expectations or consider other things that they may have not been open to, and there is some of that. With a lot of the programs that we ran over the last couple of years as well, there was trying to do some level setting as groups and kind of just make sure people were aware of what is going on in the community even before they start to analyze where they want to volunteer. So that's definitely happened. I think on the organization side, being able to most of the time organizations are struggling to put a lot of time into their volunteer engagement. They may not have dedicated personnel, or it's not able to stay consistent, and that's still a challenge too, because any creativity or any kind of like complex structures that organizations are trying to get in order to make sure that their volunteer engagement is strong, it's difficult to sustain it. So I think that there's for sure something that has to happen as far as figuring out where that line is and what else we can do to make sure that the volunteers can more seamlessly join organizations. A couple people have commented on onboarding processes and those kind of elements as well. And I think a lot of it, some of those things are actually, in a sense, easier to control, because if you can actually work on those then as a one-time thing, and then that hopefully just reduces some red tape and gets more volunteers there, because a lot of volunteers will just tell us, oh, I wanted to do this, but it didn't work out because it took too long, and then I got distracted and I got into something else. So I definitely feel like that expectation setting, one of the things that could be important is just to create more opportunities for organizations to actually meet with the really volunteer ready volunteers, people who are right on the cusp of volunteering, and actually have a chance to talk to them, because I think that conversation is so important. And maybe if an organization is struggling because they don't have a dedicated volunteer coordinator, at least if there's some pre-work that Volunteer MBC does to set up those connections, whether it's through volunteer fairs or through special learning sessions, then I think that would maybe be something we could do that would be help bridge that gap. There are a couple other really good comments here. I don't know if we have time to read all of them out, but we have one more, I think, a couple set of questions, Maham. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Madhuri?
Yes, yeah. So this is a very recent survey from ONN, which tells why recruitment and retention challenges are skyrocketing. And it says that nearly half of the organization, 46%, they experienced a challenge with volunteer recruitment or retention in past year. And mainly due to the difficulty recruiting new volunteers, which is 75%. So that's have more emphasis on how can we retain our current pool. Because if we work on retention, I think it automatically reflects on the next phase of recruiting. So keeping those in mind.
Yeah, and we did talk about a bit about this next question, key considerations before you start recruiting. So again, just assessing your needs, goals, capacity, as Madhuri said, doing a needs assessment, and thinking about this strategically as opposed to reactively. And then doing all of this will help you lay the foundation of bringing on the right volunteers that align with your mission, right?
One more thing I just wanted to add for the previous one, the key steps, even for the recruiting. Sometimes often we see that we have some of the volunteers who were not quite a skill match with when we did the interviews, right? So not leaving those. So maybe they were not good for this role. Maybe there might be other roles. You had already have that interaction with them, knowing them, what are their skill sets, to keep those as your volunteer in your volunteer bank. So when you next time when you have similar skills, it's easy and it makes you feel that for them as well that they were valued, and it's just not interview and they were left because it didn't work this time. So very importantly.
There's an interesting question in the chat. Janet is interested in knowing what type of organizations are struggling with recruitment and retention. Are there similarities among them? Are they big or small, or in particular sectors?
So we haven't done all the filters on that ONN survey, but Madhuri, maybe you know a little bit about
Yes.
from our membership?
Yes, so one of the most one which is now seeing more of the lack of recruitment is anything with related to fundraising events, because they people, it's not only just contributing to the events but even for the support. So those are the ones which they have events like at coldest night of the event, 3 of our member organizations have posted that's happening on 22nd of February. So they're saying overall it's anything with fundraising, anything with board members, fund development committees. Those are the ones which we are seeing a big drop in recruitment for those specific roles.
So you mean that organizations need them highly, but volunteers are not applying at that
Yes,
rate?
at that rate, yes.
Oh.
Moving on, what are the key components of an effective volunteer posting that grabs attention and inspires action?
Well, there were some comments in the chat along these lines about clear position descriptions. Yeah, what do you think, Madhuri? we always float to Madhuri because she coordinates our internal volunteers. I should flag that.
So this is again, which will go back, which few things which what we should do to attract. Those are the things that we have to keep in mind how to grab that. So again, simple role description, clear role description, how we can incorporate our onboarding processes, keeping the communication line not only just once they are in on onboarding and training, but keeping the open conversation, having that regular check-ins. Those are the some things which definitely affects, and it's a cycle. It's one part affects, it's like a viral effect, it's going to affect another one. So keeping all the check marks of volunteer recruitment cycle, each one is and the trends are continues going to change, and we have to keep continuing evolving with what's the current need is. And change and modify are the two key words that I would like to add. We have to change it the way how we had recruited as an organization as well, looking what is out there, how we can match with what the current needs are, and modify our own internal processes to make it win-win situation. So I would definitely like to have these two components to keep in mind: change and modify.
I would also just add the text of a position description is one part, but even nowadays people they don't want to read things that much. So we may need to create more digital assets to promote on social media and so on that are like video promotion of a volunteer opportunity, which we have done, but maybe something that with partnerships with the individual organizations, we could create better material. Back to you, Maha.
Janet also gives us some good insights. Clearly state purpose, time commitment, training orientation requirements, responsibilities, retention requirements, emphasize the impact their work will have on individuals in the community. That's something I've seen that that attracts a lot of volunteers, is emphasizing the impact that their work is going to have on the community, because oftentimes even reading a volunteer posting, it could be so oversaturated and there's a lot of information overload. So having that one statement or impact statement stand out really helps volunteers that, oh, this is exactly how what I'm volunteering is going to impact the organization or going to impact people as a whole. That's a great point. Showing the impact volunteers make, people really want to make a difference. Yeah. Short and sweet on socials. Click to learn more. For sure. We have some really good insights coming in.
Just on the count of time, though, we may have to move forward.
Yes. So again, we want to thank everyone for joining us. Just a reminder, these are the main pillars of our new strategic plan, and we're really looking forward for more engagement and more opportunities, more events to connect with all of you over the upcoming years. Thank you so much for your attendance, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.